Welcome home Billy. Ex-British soldier, 37, is greeted by his family and two bagpipers at Glasgow Airport as the first of the Chennai Six back in the UK. A former British soldier said it feels excellent to be home as the first of the Chennai Six arrived back in the UK today, more than 4 years after they were jailed in India on weapons charges. Billy Irving, of Connel, Argyll and Bute, was greeted by two bagpipers and his family after touching down at Glasgow Airport to be home for Christmas. He and 5 other British men had been guards on a ship to combat piracy in the Indian Ocean but were jailed in October 2013 after being charged with carrying unlicensed firearms and ammunition. After years of campaigning, they won an appeal against their convictions last week and were allowed to leave India. Mr. Irving was hugged in the arrivals hall by family members who had made signs reading, "Welcome home Billy." He stopped briefly to speak to the media and expressed his thanks to supporters of the campaign for his release. Mr. Irving said, "I'd just like to give a massive thank you to everyone who supported all of the Chennai Six, all of the 35 men throughout. I just want to thank everyone, they've been so kind. Thank you for your support, thank you so much. It feels excellent to be home." Two pipers played outside the terminal to welcome the 37-year-old, who had cut his hair and beard since the most recent pictures of him in India last week. The other 5 men, Nick Dunn, John Armstrong, Nicholas Simpson, Ray Tyndall and Paul Towers, are expected to arrive in the UK on Thursday. Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said earlier, "It is wonderful news that the men are returning to the UK." The Foreign Office has worked unstintingly on this case, lobbying on the men's behalf, visiting them in prison, updating their families and maintaining close contact with their legal team. I pay tribute to those who have campaigned for the men, who will be delighted to see them return home after being separated for so long. On November 28, the 6 British ex-soldiers were released from a hellhole Indian prison 4 years after they were charged with weapons offences. The men, known as the Chennai Six, beamed as they walked out of Argyll Central Prison in the city of Chennai with British consular officials. The other 17 foreign men, who were also arrested in October 2013 accused of importing guns to terrorists, were freed an hour later. On November 27, the High Court acquitted the crew from the MV Seaman Guard Ohio ship after a judge ruled the prosecution did not prove their case. The men, who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan, were arrested while working as anti-piracy guards on the ship in the Indian Ocean. Indian authorities said their weapons had not been properly declared. The group has always denied the charges, which were initially quashed but later reinstated. They were sentenced to 5 years in 2016 and were being held in the prison in Chennai, formerly known as Madras. After an appeal, all charges were dropped. The other men are Nick Dunn, 31, of Ashington, Northumberland, John Armstrong, 30, of Wigton, Cumbria, Nicholas Simpson, 47, of Catterick, North Yorkshire, Ray Tyndall, 42, of Chester, and Paul Towers, 54, of Pocklington, East Yorkshire. Yvonne McHugh, partner of Mr. Irving, said last month, "Billy called straight away, he couldn't quite believe it had happened. He's just over the moon and didn't think they would be released. He took everything that was said with a pinch of salt and didn't believe it." Speaking on the BBC's Victoria Derbyshire programme, Joanne Tomlinson, sister of Mr. Armstrong, said last month, "He called me a couple of hours ago from the embassy. We were talking about where they are going to be staying and how he gets his belongings back which are being held by his friend in India. I'm hoping once he gets a proper meal into him we will be able to have a proper conversation." An officer at the Argyll Central Prison in Chennai said, "All the 23 foreign persons who were jailed in connection with the weapons case have been released. All the 23 persons were handed over to the officials of their respective embassies, who had come to the jail to receive them. Justice Bashiraham directed the men were released, their passports returned and be reimbursed for the 1,000 rupees, £10, court fine. He said, "The prosecution has failed to prove that the disputed ship was engaged in any of the activities prejudiced to peace, good order or security of the state. Officials found 35 guns, including semi-automatic weapons, and almost 6,000 rounds of ammunition on board the anti-piracy ship MV Seaman Guard Ohio when the men were arrested in October 2013. They argued the weapons were lawfully held and their paperwork, issued by the UK government, was in order.